I stand at my bedroom window overlooking the sprawling Martin Estate vineyards, my hands trembling as I smooth the silk of this designer wedding dress I never wanted. Row after row of Cabernet vines stretch toward the mountains, bathed in late afternoon sunlight. 15 years of my life poured into this soil, and today I'm being traded for it like a medieval bargaining chip. My father's words from 3 days ago still ring in my ears. The vineyard is $75 million in debt, Angela. Harrison Martin, always the businessman, even when selling his daughter. Julian Vance has agreed to assume our debt. In exchange, he wants a marriage. To you. The tightness in my chest returns just thinking about it. The nausea. The walls of my childhood bedroom suddenly feeling like a prison cell. I'd stood there in his mahogany-paneled office, soil samples from the North Block still in my hands, unable to process what he was saying. Is this some kind of joke? I'd asked, my voice barely audible. Does this look like a joking matter? He'd slid the bank notices across his desk. We're 3 weeks from foreclosure. My mother had appeared in the doorway then, her perfect blonde hair and tailored dress a stark contrast to my work clothes and dirt-stained hands. For once in your life, Angela, you'll be useful beyond soil samples, Eleonora had said, her voice dripping with the same disappointment she'd shown me since I was 17. Don't look so shocked. You're 29, not 18. It's time you contributed something significant. Outside my window now, the central courtyard gleams with white chairs and floral arrangements worth more than what our vineyard workers earn in a month. A magnificent illusion of wealth and celebration, while inside these walls, we're drowning. 47 families. That's how many people depend on Martin Estate for their livelihood. Generations of workers whose children I've watched grow up among these vines. If the vineyard fails, they lose everything too. My reflection stares back at me from the antique full-length mirror, a stranger in white satin and lace. I study my face with detached curiosity, noting the tension around my eyes, the tightness in my jaw. I barely recognize myself. For 12 years, I've been the workhorse of Martin Estate. While Blair hosted tastings and charmed distributors with her perfect smile, I analyzed soil compositions, tracked weather patterns, and calculated distribution logistics. I built this vineyard's reputation for consistent excellence, bottle by bottle, season by season. Last year, I'd finally gathered the courage to present my business plan to my mother, an artisanal perfumery using botanical extracts from our vineyard, fragrances that captured the essence of our terroir beyond what wine alone could express. I'd worked on the projections for months, convinced the diversity would strengthen our brand. Angela, be realistic, my mother had said, barely glancing at my meticulously prepared presentation. Your projected revenue from scents wouldn't even cover the interest on our loans. Focus on the Cabernet. The memory still stings, sharp and precise like everything else about Eleonora Martin. I smoothed the dress again, my analytical mind already recategorizing this marriage. Not a personal failure but a business transaction. The final sacrifice for Martin Estate. I've given this vineyard my youth, my education, and now my future. A cold, loveless marriage of convenience seems almost fitting the logical conclusion to a life defined by duty. The knock at my door signals it's time. I straighten my shoulders and fix my expression into something appropriately bride-like. The woman in the mirror looks calm, collected, resigned. Good. Emotion has no place in a business transaction. The ceremony unfolds like a perfectly staged production. The central courtyard between the eastern and western vineyard blocks provides a magazine-worthy backdrop. Rows of our prize Cabernet stretch in every direction, framing 200 guests who murmur about my composure. They mistake my stoicism for bridal nerves, not recognizing the quiet devastation beneath. She's so serene, I overhear someone whisper, not a hint of cold feet. My father's arm feels rigid under my hand as he walks me down the aisle. Just days ago, he'd stood in my doorway, his ultimatum clear. This marriage happens, or we lose everything. Your choice, Angela. Now he performs fatherly affection with practiced precision, smiling proudly for the assembled investors and business partners who have no idea they're witnessing a hostage exchange, not a love match. Julian Vance waits at the altar, tall, impeccably dressed, his dark eyes calculating as they meet mine. Something flickers in his gaze, something I can't quite identify. Not warmth, certainly not love, but something unexpected, something almost strategic. The minister speaks words about love and commitment that feel like fiction. The weight of the marriage contract is more tangible than the platinum band Julian slides onto my finger. My hand doesn't tremble. I've accepted my fate with the same efficiency I bring to harvest logistics. During the reception, Blair flits between guests in her maid of honor dress, laughing too loudly, touching Julian's arm whenever possible. Always needing to be the center of attention, even on my wedding day. I watch her from my seat at the head table, sipping water instead of our estate Cabernet. I need clarity today, not comfort. Julian's attention is elsewhere. He moves through the crowd with deliberate purpose, greeting my father's business associates, making brief conversation with the vineyard's longest-serving employees. His eyes catalog each interaction, missing nothing. It's the methodical observation of someone gathering intelligence, not a groom enjoying his wedding day. He's not exactly who he appears to be. The realization settles over me with surprising calm. The question is whether that benefits me or threatens me further. Night falls. The guests depart. Julian and I retreat to the private suite in the vineyard's guest house. French doors open to moonlit rows of vines. My vines. The ones I've nurtured since I was barely out of high school. Julian locks the door behind us, loosens his tie with one fluid motion, and walks to the credenza where a bottle of our premium reserve Cabernet awaits. He pours 2 glasses with the precision of someone who understands wine but doesn't fetishize it. When he turns, his expression has changed, the social mask dropped. "Did you know your father owned only 40% of this vineyard until 25 years ago?" he asks, offering me a glass. I accept it, our fingers not quite touching in the exchange. What? Julian meets my gaze with unexpected intensity. Everything went perfectly according to plan. Something shifts inside me: recognition, understanding, possibility. My lips curve into a slow, sharp smile. Our plan. The wine between us catches the moonlight, dark and rich, as secrets finally ready to be unearthed. In this moment, I see Julian not as my captor in an arranged marriage, but potentially my liberator. Perhaps I won't have to face my family's secrets alone after all. I stare at Julian across the moonlit guest house, his words hanging between us like mist over the morning vines. The wineglass trembles slightly in my hand. My grandfather's letters to my grandmother, written weeks before his death. We spread the papers on the small table between us. Silas's handwriting flows across yellowed pages, his concerns about Harrison's ethics clearly expressed. Harrison insists on using the new pesticide despite my objections. The EPA warnings mean nothing to him. When I threatened to report him, he simply laughed. I fear what he might do next. A chill crawls up my spine as I cross-reference the date with my earliest vineyard records. This matches my data. There was a dramatic shift in soil chemistry that year. I always wondered why. Julian nods grimly. My grandfather was an environmentalist before the term was fashionable. He wanted sustainable practices. Your father saw that as a threat to profits. Together, we pieced together the pattern. Harrison cutting corners, Silas objecting, suspicious equipment failures, and then the convenient accident. My father dismissed my technical expertise, just as he dismissed Silas's. I murmur, memories recontextualizing themselves in real time. I used to ask questions about Silas as a child. My parents always changed the subject. I remember my father's barely contained rage when I'd suggested reviving some of Silas's old vineyard management techniques. I'd thought it was just his usual dismissal of my ideas. Now I understand it was fear. We need evidence, not just suspicions, I say, my mind already formulating research strategies. The analytical part of me, the part that tracks rainfall patterns and soil pH with obsessive precision, shifts into investigating my father's crimes. Julian watches me, a newfound respect in his expression. You're taking this remarkably well. I'm processing. I correct him, organizing the letters chronologically. I've spent my life categorizing information. This is just one more data set to analyze. But it's more than that. Something fundamental has shifted. I'm no longer a trapped bride in an arranged marriage. I'm an investigative partner with access to the truth. This marriage isn't just financial salvation for the vineyard, I say, looking up at Julian. It's a chance for justice. A memory surfaces my father's inexplicable resistance to my perfumery interests. My father blocked every attempt I made to diversify beyond wine production. I thought it was just his narrow vision, but what if it connects to Silas's past? What if Silas had similar ideas? Julian's eyes widen slightly. It's possible. My grandfather was always experimenting with the vineyard's potential. I stand at the window, looking out over the vines that have defined my existence. They seem different now, witnesses to a history I'm only beginning to uncover. The true legacy of this vineyard isn't what my parents claim it to be, I say quietly. Julian opens another folder. According to my research, your father was deeply in debt even 25 years ago. The vineyard was failing under his management while my grandfather wanted to implement sustainable practices. That tracks with the historical yield data. I confirm, recalling patterns I'd noted in old records. There was a significant drop in quality right after Silas's death, then a gradual recovery once my father implemented cheaper methods. My grandfather threatened to sell his majority share if Harrison continued using banned pesticides. Julian's voice hardens. He'd discovered your father was cutting corners with chemicals the EPA had flagged as dangerous. The pieces align with terrible clarity. They're not cartoon villains, I say. My father feared losing everything. My mother feared losing social status. Julian slides a photocopy of a journal entry across the table. Harrison's distinctive handwriting jumps out at me. He'll destroy everything we've built. I can't allow it. S.E. My mother was always the calculating one, I add. My father provided the muscle, but she designed the strategies. They've already committed murder once, Julian says quietly, and they were willing to sacrifice their own daughter. And the next morning, I sit cross-legged on the antique Persian rug in Julian's guest house, surrounded by faded journals bound in cracked leather. Julian watches me from the armchair, his fingers steepled beneath his chin as I turn each brittle page with reverence. My grandfather's wife, my grandmother, saved everything after his death, Julian explains. These journals span decades of his work at the vineyard. The handwriting feels oddly familiar, though I've never seen it before, precise yet passionate, the penmanship of someone who valued both science and artistry. Exactly how I organize my own field notes. Look at these passages from January 1999, Julian says, leaning forward to point at a particular entry. 3 weeks before his death. I read aloud. Another argument with Harrison about the Northfield pesticides. He insists on using chemicals banned in Europe, claims American regulations are good enough. I've shown him the soil analysis these compounds will accumulate in the watershed. He accuses me of environmental hysteria, cutting into profits. Profits! As if this land exists merely for quarterly returns. My stomach tightens. The Northfield, where I've fought the same battles with my father for years, presenting the same concerns, receiving the same dismissals? Keep reading? Julian urges. The next section. I flip the page and continue. I've made significant progress in the root cellar this week. The distillation process is nearly perfected. Harrison knows nothing about this project, of course. He'd ridicule it as unprofitable, just as he does everything that doesn't immediately convert to dollars. But this work matters. The essence of these vines extends beyond wine. There's an entire untapped dimension to this land. I look up sharply. Root cellar? We don't have a root cellar. Julian's eyes gleam. Exactly. Wait. I close the journal, my mind racing through the vineyard's topography like flipping through a mental map. If there was a root cellar, it would logically be near the original homestead. That's where they would have stored vegetables before modern refrigeration. Julian nods. Where exactly? I stand, unable to contain the nervous energy coursing through me. The southwest corner, where the oldest vines grow. It's the original plot from the 1,940 before expansion. There's an overgrown section my father always claimed was too rocky for replanting. Too rocky? Or deliberately neglected? Julian stands too, his expression intent. Can you find it? Yes. The certainty in my voice surprises me. I know every inch of this property. If something's hidden there, we'll find it. Dawn breaks as we trek across the vineyard, dew dampening our pants legs. Julian carries a small shovel and flashlights. I lead us along the service roads, then off the path toward a section where ancient gnarled vines give way to overgrown brush. Dad always prohibited clearing this area. I explain, pushing aside a thicket of wild grapevines that had escaped cultivation. Said it served as a natural barrier against wind erosion. Julian examines the growth with skeptical eyes. Convenient explanation. We spend an hour searching, my confidence wavering as the morning sun climbs higher. Then Julian calls out from behind a massive oak tree that predates even the vineyard. Angela, look at this. I hurry over, ducking beneath low branches. Julian points to a subtle irregularity in the ground, a rectangular depression barely perceptible beneath years of fallen leaves and weeds. That's not natural. I whisper, dropping to my knees and brushing aside debris. My fingers find the edge of something solid, a wooden door, weathered and camouflaged by dirt and vegetation. Julian kneels beside me, and together we clear away decades of natural concealment. The wooden trapdoor, reinforced with rusted metal bands, emerges from its hiding place. Your parents tried to erase this from history, Julian says quietly, just like they tried to erase Silas. A newfound boldness surges through me. I grab the iron ring handle and pull. The door resists, then yields with a groan of protest. Stale air rushes up from the darkness below. I'll go first, I say, surprising myself with the authority in my voice. Julian hands me a flashlight without argument, a small acknowledgement that shifts something between us. The wooden stairs creak under my weight as I descend into cool darkness. Julian follows close behind, his breathing steady in the confined space. At the bottom, I sweep my flashlight beam across the room and gasp. This isn't a root cellar for storing vegetables. It's a laboratory. Antique glass distillation equipment lines wooden shelves, alembics, retorts, and condensers arranged with scientific precision. A workbench stretches along one wall, covered in dusty journals and small glass vials with faded labels. Dried botanical specimens hang from the ceiling rafters, lavender, rosemary, and grape leaves suspended in time. This isn't a wine lab, I whisper, my voice catching as realization dawns. It's a perfumery workshop. Julian's flashlight joins mine, illuminating the space more fully. Silas was creating fragrances? My hands shake as I open one of the notebooks on the workbench. Inside are meticulously documented formulas, extraction methods, fixative ratios, aromatic compounds, all derived from vineyard botanicals. All exactly like the perfumery business I'd envisioned. These formulas, my voice breaks, they're exactly what I've been experimenting with. Essential oil extractions from the native herbs, complementary notes from the grape varieties themselves. Julian watches me with quiet intensity as I uncover small glass vials, their contents dried but still faintly fragrant. Labels in Silas's precise handwriting date back 25 years. He saw it too. I whisper, emotion threatening to overwhelm me. The potential beyond wine, the essence of this land captured in scent. You're more his heir than anyone in your family, Julian says, his hand finding my shoulder. The truth of his words shakes something loose inside me. All these years believing my passion for botanical perfumery was impractical, frivolous, all these years having my ideas dismissed by my parents as unprofitable distractions. They didn't just steal his life, I say, surprising myself with the force in my voice. They stole his vision. Julian nods, understanding the weight of this discovery. And now we've found it. I run my fingers along the spines of leather-bound journals, feeling a connection to Silas Croft that transcends the decades between us. This hidden space, this testament to creative vision beyond mere profit, feels more like home than the main house ever has. This will be our meeting place, I decide, a new confidence straightening my spine, away from my parents' watchful eyes. For the first time since our wedding, I feel something beyond resignation. This isn't just evidence of my parents' deception, it's validation of my own suppressed dreams. Silas Croft had seen the same potential in these vines that I do, and Julian, his grandson, now stands beside me as we reclaim that vision from the darkness. As we climb back into the sunlight, carefully concealing the entrance behind us, I feel the power balance shift. My parents may still control the vineyard above ground, but beneath the surface, Silas's legacy, and now, my future has begun to take root. I spread the yellowed newspaper clippings across my bedroom floor, arranging them in chronological order. Silas Croft's accident merited exactly 3 articles in the local paper, the initial report, a follow-up describing mechanical failure, and a brief obituary praising his contributions to Napa Valley viticulture. Not a single journalist had questioned the convenient timing or suspicious circumstances. The tractor maintenance logs are forgeries, Julian says, his voice low despite our being alone in my private wing. The signatures don't match the other maintenance records from that quarter. Since discovering Silas's hidden laboratory 3 weeks ago, we've shifted from emotional revelations to cold, methodical investigation. The euphoria of finding the perfumery workshop, that unexpected validation of my own suppressed passions, has given way to something more dangerous, a deliberate campaign to expose my parents' crimes. How far would they go to protect themselves? I ask, studying a bank statement showing the vineyard's dire financial position just before Silas's death. They murdered your grandfather over threatened divestment. If they realize we know. Julian's eyes meet mine, calculating probabilities with the same precision I use for soil analysis. They'd eliminate threats with the same efficiency they showed 25 years ago. We need to assume they're capable of anything. I nod, accepting this brutal reality without emotion. Feelings would only cloud our judgment now. Then we proceed as if our lives depend on it, because they likely do. Later that afternoon, I work through shipping manifests in the estate office, while Julian examines ownership transfer documents in the library. We maintain careful distance during daylight hours, the newly married couple settling into professional roles at the vineyard. Every move calculated, every conversation potentially monitored. The stack of newspapers beside me provides necessary cover as I search for patterns in financial transfers around the time of Silas's death. The technicality of the task suits me. Data doesn't lie, even when people do. Somewhere in these numbers exists the evidence we need. Working through lunch again? My father's voice startles me. Harrison Martin stands in the doorway, his presence filling the room with unspoken tension. The Wilkerson order needs special routing. I answer without looking up. Their distributor changed requirements last minute. He steps closer, examining the papers on my desk with uncharacteristic interest. You've always had a head for details, unlike your sister. His compliment feels like bait in a trap. Julian seems to share that quality. Quite the memory for figures. I keep my expression neutral, fighting the urge to react to his fishing expedition. He's built 3 successful import businesses. Pattern recognition is essential in international markets. My father nods slowly, his gaze lingering on the shipping manifests. Indeed, your mother has arranged dinner tonight, 7 o'clock, formal attire. She wishes to better acquaint herself with our newest family member. The warning beneath his words is clear. This isn't a social dinner, it's an interrogation. When he leaves, I release a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The vineyard no longer feels like home, it's become a battlefield where every interaction carries hidden meaning. I send Julian a text about dinner using our established code about vineyard operations. Meeting tonight about Cabernet distribution strategy. Mother wants full presentation. That evening, Eleonora presides over the formal dining room like a general commanding troops. Crystal glassware catches the chandelier light, turning wine into blood-red prisms. My mother has always wielded social occasions as weapons, and tonight's target is unmistakable. Julian, she begins after the first course, her smile never reaching her cold eyes. Tell me again about your family's business interests in Europe. The details seem to slip my mind. I watch him navigate her interrogation with practiced ease, maintaining the cover story while revealing nothing of substance. Every shared glance between us carries risk. We've become partners in a high-stakes performance where the slightest misstep could expose everything. Your accent has such interesting inflections, my mother continues, refilling his wineglass herself. Where exactly did you say you spent your formative years? Boarding school in Switzerland, university in London, then business development across continental Europe. Julian answers, his tone casual yet precise. One picks up linguistic oddities along the way. My father watches Julian's every response, analyzing for inconsistencies while my mother leads the verbal assault. I recognize their strategy. It's the same divide-and-conquer approach they've used in business negotiations for decades. Angela tells me you've taken an interest in our historical production records. Harrison interjects, curious area of focus for someone new to viniculture. Julian meets his gaze without hesitation. Understanding your past successes provides context for future growth strategies. Angela's institutional knowledge has been invaluable. Beneath the table, my hands clench into fists, the only outward sign of the tension coursing through me. This isn't just about protecting our investigation, it's about building a foundation for something bigger than personal vindication. Every defensive maneuver tonight strengthens our position for the confrontation to come. 3 days later, Julian and I huddle over ancient vineyard maps, spread across a rarely used office in the storage building. The original property surveys might reveal where other structures existed before my parents' extensive renovations. If Silas had hidden anything else besides the perfumery laboratory, these maps would show it. Look at this, Julian whispers, pointing to a small structure marked near the eastern property line. This building doesn't appear on any current maps. The sudden click of heels against concrete freezes us both. Blair appears in the doorway, her expression curious. What are you two so interested in? These are ancient history. She steps closer, peering at the faded documents. I force a casual smile. Just showing Julian how the property has evolved. Dad's expansion in the early 2000s nearly doubled our production capacity. Blair's eyes narrow slightly, her attention shifting between us. Mother's been asking where you disappear to during the afternoons. Should I tell her you're playing historian? The implied threat hangs between us. Blair has always been our mother's unwitting spy, trading information for approval. After she leaves, Julian and I exchange grim looks. We need to be more careful, I whisper. My mother misses nothing. The pressure forces us closer together. No longer just allies against my parents, but partners against a threat that grows more dangerous by the day. What began as an arranged marriage has transformed into something neither of us anticipated, a bond forged in shared danger and common purpose. Tonight, I checked my watch for the third time. The harvest tasting gala buzzes with excitement behind me, but my focus remains on the oak-paneled door to Harrison's office. Vineyard investors in tailored suits and summer dresses mingle through the central courtyard, sampling our latest vintages and admiring the sunset over the Cabernet blocks. The perfect distraction. Remember, create a crisis big enough to demand both their attention. Julian whispers beside me, his breath warm against my ear. But not so catastrophic, it damages the actual wine. I nod, squeezing his hand once before we separate. Julian melts into the crowd, heading toward the east wing, where he'll wait for my signal. My pulse quickens as I approach Kyle, our head fermentation specialist. Kyle, I need your help with something urgent. I say, my voice practiced and even. I think we have a temperature fluctuation in Tank 7. Kyle's eyes widen. Tank 7 houses our premium reserve, the batch my father showcases to potential investors. How bad? Bad enough that we need my father and mother. Now. 5 minutes later, Harrison and Eleonora storm into the fermentation room, their faces tight with barely concealed panic. My father's bow tie sits slightly askew from his hasty exit from the gala. What do you mean potentially compromised? My father demands, his voice echoing against the stainless steel tanks. I launch into a detailed explanation of acidity levels and bacterial concerns, drawing on 12 years of vineyard expertise to craft a problem complex enough to hold their attention. My mother's eyes narrow, her gaze cutting through my technical jargon. And this couldn't wait until after the gala? Eleonora asks, her voice sharp. Would you prefer I let $50,000 of premium Cabernet turn to vinegar while you charm the Hendersons? I counter, matching her tone. The subtle vibration of my phone signals Julian has reached Harrison's office. Now I need to keep them occupied for at least 15 minutes. We need to test every tank in this series. I insist, pointing to the row of gleaming steel cylinders. If this is systemic, we could lose the entire vintage. Harrison pales. Even Eleonora can't argue with that catastrophic possibility. Inside my father's office, Julian works quickly. His heart hammers against his ribs as he eases open the filing cabinet behind Harrison's imposing desk. The lock had yielded easily to the techniques he'd learned in his decade-long preparation for this moment. Restructuring 1999. Julian whispers, finding the dusty folder tucked behind more recent financial records. The year of his grandfather's death. He flips through the contents, his phone camera capturing each damning piece of evidence. Harrison's emails coordinating pesticide purchases that violated California regulations. Maintenance logs for the tractor that had supposedly failed dated weeks before the accident. Eleonora's correspondence with an unmarked laboratory that had falsified soil reports to hide chemical contamination. His hands tremble when he uncovers the share transfer documents. The signatures clearly forged, backdated to make it appear Silas had willingly sold his 60% stake in the vineyard before his death. My God. Julian breathes, finding the final piece of evidence, an insurance policy on Silas Croft. Tripled by Eleonora, just 2 weeks before the accident. The sound of footsteps in the hallway freezes him mid-motion. Back in the fermentation room, I'm running out of technical problems to invent. Harrison has begun to look less concerned and more suspicious, checking his watch repeatedly. I should get back to the Peterson group, he says. They're considering a major distribution deal. My stomach tightens. But we haven't checked the final fermentation rates. If those are compromised. Angela. My father cuts me off, his voice sharpening. This feels excessive even for your usual thoroughness. Eleonora places her hand on Harrison's arm. Why don't you return to our guests? I'll help Angela finish these tests. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. And then I need to retrieve those contract papers from your office. Panic flares in my chest. I pull out my phone, typing rapidly. Urgent. Coming to office. Get out. The footsteps grow louder outside Harrison's office door. Julian frantically returns the folder to its place, smoothing the dust pattern on top to match how he found it. He slips his phone into his pocket, the evidence safely captured, and scans the room for an exit. The door handle turns. Julian presses himself against the wall behind a tall bookcase, barely breathing as Harrison enters. My father pauses, frowning slightly as he surveys his domain. Something feels different to him, though he can't identify what. He crosses to his desk, checks a drawer, then glances at the filing cabinet Julian had just closed. The storage closet door stands slightly ajar to Julian's left. With Harrison's back turned, Julian slides silently inside, easing the door nearly closed behind him. Harrison stands perfectly still, listening. Hello? Is someone here? From my position in the fermentation room, I watch Eleonora's retreating figure through the glass doors. My heart lodges in my throat. I've failed. Julian is trapped. Mother! Blair's voice cuts through the tension as she saunters into the fermentation room. The Williamson family is asking for you. Something about their daughter's wedding next spring? Eleonora hesitates, torn between social obligation and her suspicion. I need to get some papers from your father's office first. They specifically mentioned their new vineyard purchase in Sonoma, Blair adds, examining her manicured nails. Apparently they're looking for a consultant. The magic words. Eleonora's ambition overrides her suspicion. Tell them I'll be right there, she says, changing direction. An hour later, Julian and I meet at the laboratory, our sanctuary hidden among the overgrown vines. His face is pale but triumphant as he connects his phone to the ancient computer Silas left behind. We have everything, he says, bringing up the photographs. Insurance policies, falsified maintenance records, forged transfer documents. Harrison and Eleonora planned every detail of your grandfather's murder. I stare at the evidence, months of investigation, culminating in this moment of terrible clarity. We have enough, I whisper. It's time. Julian nods, his expression somber. Your father made one critical mistake. He underestimated you. We begin mapping our strategy for the confrontation, selecting the perfect location, the old equipment shed with the rusted-out tractor still inside. The murder weapon itself will bear witness to their confession. Tomorrow, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. We end this tomorrow. The next day, I pace the wooden floorboards of the old equipment shed, my steps raising tiny clouds of dust that dance in the slanting beams of the work lights we've positioned. The rusted tractor sits in the corner like a silent witness, its frame sagging on deflated tires, the metal corroded from 25 years of neglect. And rain. And secrets. Are you sure about this? Julian asks, checking the voice recording app on his phone for the third time. Once we make this call, there's no going back. I run my fingers along the ancient workbench where farm tools from another era lie abandoned. The smell of old motor oil and damp earth fills my nostrils. I've been preparing for this my entire adult life without knowing it. I'd made the call, my voice deliberately panicked as I told my father about seeing someone lurking around the equipment shed, the same shed where Silas Croft took his last breath 25 years ago. Julian positions himself beside the tractor, ensuring the harsh work light illuminates the undercarriage where the cut brake lines remain visible after all these years. The evidence preserved by neglect and isolation. Your father didn't want to come, Julian says, sliding his phone into his jacket pocket. He suggested calling security. But my mother insisted they handle it personally, I reply, knowing Eleonora would never risk outside eyes on anything potentially damaging to the family image. Quietly. The strategic preparation of the past 2 months culminates tonight. Every document Julian photographed from Harrison's office, every maintenance log we found with falsified dates, every piece of evidence meticulously gathered, all leading to this moment. I close my eyes briefly, feeling the weight of what we're about to do. We're deliberately luring my potentially murderous parents to a remote corner of the property with no witnesses. The same people who staged an accident to gain control of a vineyard worth millions. Headlights sweep across the small, grimy window, illuminating dust particles in the air. Car doors slam outside. Julian gives me a quick nod and slips his hand into his pocket, activating the recording app. The door creaks open, and my mother enters first, her designer boots entirely inappropriate for the muddy path leading to the shed. Her eyes narrow as she takes in the scene, her daughter standing beside Julian Vance in this forgotten corner of the Martin estate. "What is this, Angela?" "What?" Eleonora demands, eyes darting suspiciously around the dimly lit space. "Your call sounded urgent." My father pushes in behind her, his face darkening when he spots Julian. "Julian!" Harrison roars, his voice bouncing off the metal walls. "How dare you bring us out here? What game are you playing?" I step forward, planting myself firmly between my parents and Julian. This isn't a game. It's about Silas Croft. The name drops into the space between us like a stone in still water. I watch ripples of reaction cross my parents' faces, my father's momentary freeze, my mother's almost imperceptible flinch. "Who?" My father recovers quickly, his voice a careful neutral. Julian emerges from behind me, his presence steady and calm. "My grandfather. Your business partner. The man who owned 60% of this vineyard until his convenient accident 25 years ago." I see recognition dawn in my father's eyes, quickly masked by practiced indignation. "That's absurd. You're Julian Vance. Your family." "Is the Croft family?" Julian interrupts. "I changed my name years ago to investigate my grandfather's death without alerting you." My mother's posture shifts subtly, shoulders squaring as she calculates this new information. "I don't know what nonsense you've been filling Angela's head with, but Silas Croft died in a tragic accident. Ancient history." Julian pulls out his phone and begins to scroll through photos. Interesting history, actually. Like this email you sent tripling Silas's life insurance policy just 2 weeks before his death. He holds up the screen, showing the incriminating document. Or these falsified maintenance logs for the tractor. My father steps forward, his face reddening. "You broke into my office. Those are private business records." "Just like these backdated share transfers?" I ask, pulling out copies of the documents we found. "The ones that mysteriously transferred Silas's 60% ownership to you the day after his death?" Harrison's face pales. "Those are legitimate business transactions. You have no idea what you're talking about." "Then explain why the notary signature is dated 3 days after the notary in question had a stroke and was hospitalized." Julian counters, his voice steady. "We checked, Harrison. Every document, every signature, every date." My mother's calculating gaze shifts from Julian to me. "Angela, whatever this man has told you." "He told me nothing," I interrupt. "I found it myself. The soil reports you falsified to cover up the banned pesticides Silas opposed. The insurance payout that saved the vineyard from bankruptcy. Your bankruptcy, not his. Silas was solvent. You were the one drowning in debt." My father's denials grow more desperate with each piece of evidence we present, his composure cracking like thin ice under too much weight. I feel a strange calm watching him unravel, as though I'm observing a chemical reaction I've long anticipated. Julian steps closer to the tractor, directing my father's attention to it. "Would you like to explain these brake lines, Harrison? The ones that were clearly cut, not worn through?" My father stares at the rusted machine, the evidence of his crime preserved by decades of neglect. Something in him breaks. His shoulders slump, and the mask of righteous indignation slips away. "He would have bankrupted us," Harrison confesses, his voice cracking. "He wanted to switch to organic methods that would have cost millions we didn't have. He was going to sell his shares to that corporate conglomerate from Chicago." "You cut the brakes," Julian says. Not a question, but a confirmation. My father doesn't deny it. His silence is damning. "One push," my mother adds coldly, stepping forward, "was all it took to secure your sister's future." The casual admission steals my breath. Not just the brakes, but a physical push, sending Silas to his death down the vineyard's steepest slope. "Thank you," Julian says, pulling his phone from his pocket, the screen showing the active recording. That's exactly what we needed to hear. My mother's calculating eyes turn to pure hatred as she realizes they've been recorded. Her gaze locks onto me with such venom I instinctively step back. "You stupid, ungrateful girl." The words drip with contempt. Harrison lunges toward Julian, but I move between them, blocking his path. "It's over, father, get out." "You have no idea what you've done," my mother hisses, grabbing Harrison's arm to restrain him. "This vineyard is your legacy too. Everything we did was for this family." "Murder isn't a legacy," I reply. "It's a crime." My parents retreat, my mother practically dragging my father toward the door. We watch them leave, headlights sweeping across the vineyard as they drive back toward the main house. Julian's hand finds mine in the dim light of the equipment shed, warm against my cold fingers. "We got what we came for." "A confession," I whisper, the weight of 2 decades of lies finally lifting from my shoulders. The tractor sits silently in the corner, Silas Croft's final resting place, and now the site of justice's first step. Tomorrow will bring police and formal charges, but tonight, for the first time in 25 years, truth has returned to Martin Estate. The next day, I grip the audio recording in my palm, as Sheriff Thomas leans forward in his chair, his weathered face impassive. The morning sun streams through the blinds of his office, casting prison bar shadows across the polished oak desk. Julian sits beside me, our shoulders not quite touching, his presence steady as a heartbeat. "You're telling me Harrison and Eleanora Martin murdered Silas Croft 25 years ago?" Sheriff Thomas's voice remains professionally neutral, but I catch the slight narrowing of his eyes. "Yes." I place my father's confession on the desk between us, the phone's screen dark and unassuming. "We have the evidence right here." Julian slides a leather portfolio across the desk, the complete case: journals, digital files, forged documents. His voice doesn't waver. "And this," he taps the phone, "is her father confessing to murdering my grandfather." Sheriff Thomas opens the portfolio slowly. I've cataloged everything meticulously, every piece of evidence we collected over the past 3 months, laid out with the same precision I once used for soil analysis reports. He reads in silence, occasionally glancing up at us. "This is no longer a cold case," he says finally, closing the portfolio. "This is murder." "We know." My voice sounds calmer than I feel. The sheriff picks up his phone, pressing a single button. "Get Adams and Miller. We're heading to Martin Estate." He looks at us, his expression grim. "I'll need your statements. But not right now. Right now we're going to bring them in." The drive to the vineyard feels surreal. Sheriff Thomas's patrol car ahead of us, Julian's hand steady on the wheel of his Audi. No sirens, no flashing lights. Just 3 vehicles moving with quiet purpose down the winding road leading to my childhood home. "Are you all right?" Julian asks, glancing at me. I search for the right word. "Ready." The morning dew still clings to the vines as we pull into the circular driveway. The main house stands like a fortress of limestone and cedar, shadows filling the recessed windows. Home, prison, crime scene. Sheriff Thomas and his deputies approach the front door with measured steps. No dramatic battering ram, no shouted commands, just 3 knocks, firm and official. Our estate manager answers, his face paling when he sees the uniforms. Julian and I hang back, watching from the circular driveway as Sheriff Thomas asks for my parents. Moments later, we follow them inside. I find Harrison and Eleanora in the main office, the same room, where my father had told me about my arranged marriage just 3 months ago. They're huddled by the antique partner's desk, phones clutched in white-knuckled grips. My mother's perfect blonde hair is swept into a hasty bun, my father's tie slightly askew. "What is the meaning of this?" Harrison demands, phone still pressed to his ear. "We have our attorneys on the line." "Harrison Martin, Eleanora Martin," Sheriff Thomas says, ignoring the phones. "You're under arrest for the murder of Silas Croft." My mother's face drains of color. This is absurd. But her voice lacks its usual cutting edge. "We have your confession, father." The words taste strange on my tongue, not bitter, not sweet, just final. I watch my parents exchange glances, the same silent communication I've witnessed my entire life, decisions made about me without my input. But now their silent language carries panic, not control. The deputies read them their rights. No handcuffs, not yet, but the message is clear. This isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't going away. Julian steps forward. I am Julian Vance Croft, Silas Croft's grandson. His voice carries the weight of 25 years of waiting. And I've been looking forward to this day for a very long time. My father lunges toward Julian, but Deputy Adams blocks his path with a firm hand on his chest. Mr. Martin, please don't make this worse, the deputy warns. Through the bay windows, I see vineyard workers gathering in small clusters, watching as Sheriff Thomas escorts my parents outside. Their faces are solemn, many of the older ones remembering Silas and his kindness. I step outside, the morning air sweet with ripening grapes. One of the workers, Miguel, who's tended these vines for 30 years, catches my eye. He gives me a small nod of respect, and suddenly, I understand. This isn't just about Julian's vengeance or my liberation. It's about setting right something fundamentally wrong at the foundation of this place. I turn to Sheriff Thomas, as my parents are guided into separate patrol cars. This was Silas Croft's vineyard, I say quietly. We're just returning it. The patrol cars pull away, gravel crunching under their tires. No sirens, no spectacle, just the quiet, devastating weight of justice, 25 years delayed. Julian's hand finds mine. It's done, he says. But we both know it's only beginning. The local news vans arrive within the hour. By evening, Julian and I sit in the guest house, watching reporters stand at the edge of our property, the main house looming behind them like a movie backdrop. Martin estate owners arrested for cold case murder, the anchor announces, her expression professionally grave. Sources say evidence includes a recorded confession. Julian mutes the television. How are you holding up? I stare at my reflection in the darkened screen. I don't know yet. The truth is, I feel nothing and everything at once: relief, exhaustion, a strange sense of emptiness where anxiety once lived. The call comes the next morning. Julian answers, his jaw tightening as he listens. When he hangs up, his expression tells me everything. They've been released on $5 million bail, he says. $5 million. I laugh, the sound hollow in my chest. It's just a business problem to them. Julian paces the length of the kitchen, sunlight catching the edges of his profile. Your parents still have powerful friends. And enemies. I stand, my hands steady despite the turmoil inside. People who've been waiting for them to fall. The reality settles between us. Harrison and Eleanora Martin are cornered, but they're not defeated. Not yet. They still have resources, connections, options. Julian stops pacing, turning to me. My grandfather can't rest until they're truly finished. Something in his voice draws me closer. 3 months ago, we were strangers joined in a business arrangement. Now we're partners against a clear and present danger bound by something deeper than convenience or revenge. We'll see this through. I promise. Together. 2 days later, we're in the living room of the guest house. Papers spread across the coffee table, trial preparations, witness statements, financial documents tracing the ownership transfer after Silas's death. Julian is on the phone with his attorney when a car pulls into the driveway. I peer through the blinds and feel my blood freeze. Julian, I whisper. It's my mother. He ends the call immediately, moving to stand beside me. Through the slats of the blinds, we watch Eleanora Martin step from her Mercedes. She's alone, dressed impeccably in a navy suit that makes her look more corporate executive than accused murderer. In her hands, she carries a single bottle of wine. But, what is she doing? I breathe. Nothing good. Julian's voice is tight. Let me handle this. No. I place my hand on his arm. We face her together. The doorbell chimes, the sound incongruously cheerful. Julian nods once, and I open the door. Angela, darling. My mother's smile is perfect, practiced, chilling. May I come in? I step aside wordlessly. Eleanora glides into the living room as if she owns it, her gaze sliding over our scattered papers before landing on Julian. A peace offering. She holds up the bottle, one of our rarest vintages, a 1994 Cabernet Sauvignon worth thousands. While we sort this mess out. There's nothing to sort out, Julian says. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence can be interpreted many ways. My mother's voice is silk over steel. Juries can be unpredictable. End quote. She places the bottle on the coffee table and reaches for the corkscrew on the side table. Let's have a civilized conversation. The three of us. I watch her hands elegant, manicured, and steady as she uncorks the bottle with practiced ease. The same hands that helped orchestrate Silas's death, that tripled his insurance policy 2 weeks before his accident. One glass. She smiles, maternal and predatory at once. I sit in the courthouse, my hands steady as Judge Ellison reads the sentence. 30 years. No parole. The words echo through the wood-paneled chamber as Harrison and Eleonora Martin, my parents, stand rigid in matching Navy suits. The evidence in this case is overwhelming, Judge Ellison says, peering over her glasses. A staged accident, falsified documents, and most damning of all, a recorded confession, followed by an attempted murder of a witness. I don't feel the vindication I expected, just a peculiar weightlessness, like something long carried has finally been set down. Beside me, Julian's hand finds mine, warm and steady. The trial itself was a formality after Julian's recording captured my father's damning words. He would have bankrupted us. The digital evidence, the forged ownership documents, the cut brake lines on Silas's tractor, all of it formed an airtight case. But it was the poisoning attempt, Eleonora's desperate final move, that sealed their fate beyond any possibility of leniency. 3 days later, Sheriff Thomas calls with news I should have anticipated. Blair's gone, he says, his voice crackling over the speaker. Liquidated $3.5 million from an offshore account your parents had hidden. Last seen boarding a private jet to Dubai. Julian looks up from his coffee. She was never going to stay and face the music. No. I agree. Blair was always the escape artist. My sister, who spent her life as the celebrated face of Martin Estate, while I worked in the soil, has abandoned the family legacy without hesitation, just as I once feared doing myself. The transformation still stuns me some mornings. I wake in the master bedroom, no longer relegated to the modest wing, and marvel at how peaceful my sleep has become. No more twisting dreams of disappointing my parents. No more waking to immediate criticism about vineyard operations or distribution plans. Julian has been my constant through it all. From the courthouse steps to the employee meetings where nervous faces sought reassurance, he stood beside me without overshadowing. Our partnership has evolved beyond the revenge that first united us, becoming something neither of us anticipated on our wedding day. The Beckman Vineyard sent over 2 of their best field workers to help with the West Block harvest. Julian mentions one evening, reviewing emails, and the Collier family offered equipment loans if we need them. The community response surprises me daily. Neighboring vineyards reach out with support. Employees who've been with Martin Estate for decades express relief and renewed loyalty now that the truth is known. Last week, Judge Ellison made it official. I am the rightful heir to Martin Estate. The irony doesn't escape me. My parents' attempt to control me through marriage ultimately led to their downfall and my inheritance of everything they valued. 3 months after the trial, Julian and I walk through the vineyard at sunset. The light paints the Cabernet vines gold and crimson, a stark contrast to the coldness of our wedding day. Where I once walked with resignation, I now move with purpose. Where isolation once pressed around me, partnership now sustains me. I've been thinking, I say, stopping to examine a cluster of grapes. This place was built on blood. I don't want that legacy. Julian doesn't react with surprise or protest. He simply waits for me to continue, respecting my judgment in a way my parents never did. I want to liquidate the entire Martin estate. I say, return 60% to the Croft family trust, what should have been yours all along. The words feel right as they leave my mouth. No second guessing, no wondering if this decision will earn approval. It simply needs to be done. And the remaining 40? Julian asks. The Silas Croft Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture, I reply.